Deep beneath the desert sands, behind walls older than recorded history, there was a door that had been sealed for more than 3,000 years. A door marked with warnings in a language almost forgotten. The warnings were clear. Turn back. Death waits for those who enter. Let the darkness keep its secrets. But in 2019, a team of archaeologists did something no one had done in millennia. They opened that door. What they found inside challenged everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Some say it was a tomb. Others claim it was a library of forbidden knowledge. A few believe it held technology we still don't understand. By the end of this video, you will see what was hidden in that chamber. You will understand why it was locked away, and you will learn why some people believe it should have stayed sealed forever. Throughout human history, every civilization has had its secrets, places where only priests could enter, chambers reserved for kings alone, rooms sealed forever after sacred rituals. These weren't just empty spaces, they were repositories of power, knowledge, and mystery. The ancient Egyptians sealed the pyramids after burying their pharaohs. The Maya built secret chambers beneath their temples. The Chinese emperors created entire underground palaces that remained hidden for centuries. And in almost every case, there were warnings, curses written in stone, legends passed down through generations. But here's what makes our story different. This chamber wasn't just hidden. It wasn't simply lost to time. It was deliberately sealed with one purpose: to keep people out forever. The question we need to answer is simple, but the answer is anything but. Why? What could be so dangerous, so powerful, or so forbidden that an entire civilization would lock it away and beg future generations never to open it? In this documentary, we're going to walk through that forbidden door together. We'll examine the civilization that built it. We'll explore the myths that surrounded it. We'll witness the moment it was opened, and we'll look at what was found inside. But I warn you, some mysteries, once uncovered, change the way we see the world. This is one of them. Our story begins more than 3,000 years ago, in a place the ancient people called Kem. Today, we know this region as the Western Desert of Egypt, near the border with Libya. But in the time we're talking about, around 1,200 BCE, this was a thriving center of culture and learning. Kem was never as famous as the great cities like Thebes or Memphis. It wasn't a capital. It didn't have the biggest pyramids. But according to ancient records, it had something else: knowledge. The priests of Kem were known throughout the ancient world as keepers of secrets. Secrets about astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and some say, secrets about life and death themselves. The civilization of Kem reached its height during the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III. This was a golden age. The people built temples dedicated to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. They created schools where students came from across the Mediterranean to learn. Greek historians, writing centuries later, spoke of Kem as a place of mystery and wonder. But then something happened. Around 1150 BCE, at the peak of their power, the people of Kem suddenly abandoned their city. Not slowly, over generations. Not because of war or invasion. They left quickly, within a matter of weeks or months, and they never came back. For centuries, historians debated why. Some said drought. Others pointed to political upheaval in Egypt. A few suggested plague or disease. But none of these theories fully explained the speed of the abandonment. It was as if the people simply fled from something. When archaeologists first excavated Kem in the 1922, they found the ruins of a sophisticated city. There were temples, libraries, workshops, and homes. But something was strange. Many buildings had been deliberately sealed from the inside. Doorways were bricked up. Passages were blocked with stone. It wasn't decay or collapse. It was intentional. And in almost every sealed building, they found the same thing. Warnings. Inscriptions carved into walls, written on door frames, etched into the floors, all saying variations of the same message. Do not open. Do not enter. What lies within must remain hidden. End. End. But the most intriguing discovery was in the center of the ancient city. There, beneath what appeared to be the main temple complex, ground-penetrating radar revealed something massive, a chamber, a large, carefully constructed space that had been deliberately buried under tons of stone and sand. Unlike the other sealed rooms, this chamber had something unique, a single entrance, blocked by a massive stone door. And that door bore a warning far more elaborate and terrifying than any other found in Chem. For decades, archaeologists left it alone. The warnings were too specific. The seal is too deliberate. And frankly, no one wanted to be responsible for what might happen if they opened it. But as we'll see, sometimes curiosity is stronger than fear. Long before archaeologists ever set foot in Chem, the local people knew about the chamber. They had stories passed down from generation to generation for more than 3,000 years. And these stories all agreed on one thing: the chamber beneath the temple was cursed. The oldest legend says that the chamber was built by the high priests of Thoth during a time of great crisis. According to the story, the priests received a vision from the god himself. They were shown knowledge that humanity was not ready to possess, knowledge that could bring either enlightenment or destruction. The priests were faced with a terrible choice. They could destroy this knowledge forever, ensuring it could never harm anyone, or they could preserve it, hoping that one day humanity would be wise enough to use it properly. They chose to preserve it, but they also chose to hide it so completely that only those truly worthy would ever find it. According to legend, they built the chamber deep beneath the temple. They filled it with scrolls, tablets, and objects of power. Then they performed a ritual that lasted 40 days and 40 nights. A ritual to seal the chamber not just with stone, but with magic. The legends say that anyone who entered the chamber without proper preparation would face 3 tests. The first test was physical. The chamber itself would resist entry, collapsing, or sealing itself further if approached with force. The second test was mental. Those who entered would see visions that could drive them mad. And the third test was spiritual. The knowledge within would corrupt anyone whose heart was not pure. Now, you might think these are just superstitious stories, ancient people trying to scare away tomb robbers. And for a long time, that's exactly what scholars believed. But there were details in the legends that couldn't be easily dismissed. For example, the legends described the door to the chamber in very specific terms. They said it was made of a stone that drinks light, a stone that appeared black even in bright sunshine. They said it was carved with symbols in a language older than words, from a time when gods walked the earth. And they said that trying to break the door would cause the entire structure to collapse, burying the chamber forever. When archaeologists finally located the door in the 1,980 seconds, they were shocked. The door was indeed made of an unusual type of basalt that absorbed light in a way they'd never seen before. It was covered in symbols that didn't match any known ancient Egyptian script, and structural analysis showed that the entire chamber was built with a clever system. If the door was forced, supporting stones would shift, causing a controlled collapse. But perhaps the strangest part of the legend was the final warning. According to the stories, the last high priest of Kem, a man named Amenhotep Sa, stood before the sealed chamber and pronounced a curse. He said, "Those who open this door in anger will find death. Those who open it in greed will find madness. Only those who open it in service of truth will find what they seek." But even truth comes with a price. These words were not just spoken. They were carved into the door itself in 3 languages: the formal hieroglyphics of the priests, the common script of the people, and a third script that no one could read. It was as if they wanted to make absolutely certain that anyone who found the chamber, from any culture or time period, would understand the warning. For over 100 years after Kem was rediscovered, no one dared to open that door. Archaeologists studied it. They photographed it. They debated what might be inside, but they left it sealed. The warnings were too clear. The stakes are too high. And besides, there was no guarantee that anything inside had survived 3,000 years. That is, until 2016, when a young archaeologist named Dr. Sarah Morrison arrived in Kem with a new technology and a bold proposal. A proposal that would change everything. Dr. Sarah Morrison wasn't looking for fame when she came to Kem. She was a specialist in non-invasive archaeology, meaning she used technology to study ancient sites without digging or disturbing them. Her specialty was ground-penetrating radar and 3D imaging. She could see through walls and beneath floors without moving a single stone. In early 2016, Dr. Morrison's team arrived at Kem with a new type of scanner, one that could create incredibly detailed 3-dimensional maps of underground structures. Their goal was simple: scan the sealed chamber and finally see what was inside, all without opening the door. For 3 weeks, they scanned. They mapped every inch of the area around the door, building up a complete picture of what lay beyond. And when they compiled all the data, what they saw left them speechless. The chamber was much larger than anyone had imagined. It wasn't a single room. It was a complex network of connected spaces, like an underground palace. The main chamber was roughly 30 meters long and 20 meters wide, with a ceiling that rose nearly 10 meters high. But connected to this main space were at least 6 smaller rooms, each serving a different purpose. The scans showed something else too: objects. Lots of them. The interior of the chamber was filled with carefully arranged items. There were tall structures that looked like shelves or racks. There were large rectangular shapes that could be chests or sarcophagi. And in the center of the main chamber, there was something truly bizarre. It appeared to be a perfectly spherical object, approximately 2 meters in diameter, suspended somehow in the center of the room. The scans couldn't determine what it was made of or how it was suspended. The density readings made no sense. It was either hollow or made of a material far less dense than anything that should be able to maintain that shape. But here's what made Dr. Morrison's discovery truly revolutionary. The scans showed something that changed the entire debate about whether to open the chamber. They revealed air currents. That might not sound dramatic, but think about it. This chamber had been sealed for 3,000 years. It should have been completely airtight. But the thermal imaging showed subtle temperature variations that could only mean one thing: air was moving. Somehow, the chamber was ventilated. It was breathing. This discovery changed everything. If air was circulating, it meant that organic materials inside might have been preserved. Scrolls, papyrus, wood, even fabric. Things that normally would have decayed long ago might still be intact. The chamber wasn't just a tomb or a storage room. It was designed to preserve its contents indefinitely. Dr. Morrison presented her findings to the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities in April 2016. She argued that with modern technology, they could open the chamber carefully, document everything, and preserve whatever was inside. She also pointed out that time was not on their side. The region was becoming increasingly unstable politically. Climate change was affecting the desert. If they didn't open the chamber soon, they might lose the chance forever. The debate that followed was intense. Some archaeologists supported Dr. Morrison. Others accused her of being a grave robber, of disrespecting the wishes of the ancient priests. Religious leaders in the region were divided. Some believed the chamber held sacred knowledge that should be shared. Others believed the warnings should be heeded. For 2 years, the debate raged. International media covered the story. Documentaries were made about the sealed chamber, all speculating about what might be inside. Online forums exploded, with theories ranging from reasonable to completely absurd. Some people claimed it was a library of lost wisdom. Others said it contained alien artifacts. A few insisted it was empty, just an elaborate prank by the ancient Egyptians. Finally, in January 2019, the Egyptian government made a decision. They would allow Dr. Morrison to open the chamber, but under strict conditions. The opening would be documented by an international team. Religious observers would be present. Everything would be done with the utmost care and respect. And if at any point the structure seemed unstable or dangerous, the operation would stop immediately. The opening was scheduled for the 15th of March, 2019, a date chosen for its symbolic meaning. The Ides of March, a reminder that sometimes seeking knowledge comes with unexpected consequences. The morning of the 15th of March 2019 started like any other in the desert. The sun rose over the ruins of Kem, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold and red. But today was different. Today, a door that had been sealed for more than 3 millennia was about to be opened. Dr. Morrison's team had prepared for months. They had structural engineers to monitor the stability of the chamber. They had conservation experts ready to protect any fragile artifacts. They had linguists and historians to document inscriptions. They even had medical staff on standby, though no one wanted to talk about why that might be necessary. The plan was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. They would use a specially designed hydraulic system to slowly, very slowly, push the stone door inward. Sensors would monitor every millimeter of movement. If anything seemed wrong, if any supporting structure showed signs of stress, they would stop immediately. At exactly 8 a.m., with cameras rolling and dozens of people watching, Dr. Morrison gave the signal. The hydraulic system engaged with a deep, mechanical hum. For the first 30 minutes, nothing visible happened. The pressure was being applied gradually, testing the door's resistance. Then, at 8:37 a.m., there was a sound, a deep, grinding sound, like stones scraping against stone. The door was moving, just barely, just a few millimeters, but it was moving. And with that movement came something unexpected, a rush of air. The air that came out of the chamber was cold. Not just cool, but genuinely cold, as if it had been preserved at a lower temperature than the surrounding rock. And it carried a smell, not the musty smell of decay that you'd expect from a sealed space. Something else. Something that smelled almost like incense, like spices, like the air inside a temple during a ceremony. The team paused. They ran tests on the air. No toxic gases, no dangerous bacteria or spores. The air was clean, incredibly clean, for a space that had been sealed for 3,000 years. Whatever ventilation system the ancient builders had created, it had worked beyond all expectations. For the next 4 hours, they continued the process. Millimeter by millimeter, the door moved. Every centimeter was documented, photographed, measured. The crack widened. Light from the team's powerful lamps began to penetrate the darkness beyond. At 1:15 p.m., the door had moved enough that they could see inside. Dr. Morrison approached with a high-powered flashlight. She pointed it through the gap. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just stared. Then she said something that sent chills through everyone present. She said, "It's exactly like the legends described it, down to the smallest detail. How is that possible? One. No, by 3 p.m., the door had opened enough for a person to enter. But Dr. Morrison insisted on one more precaution. They sent in a small robotic camera first, a device that could navigate the space and send back real-time video without risking human life. The robot entered the chamber. Its camera lights switched on, and for the first time in 3,000 years, human eyes saw what the priests of Kem had hidden away. The chamber was pristine, not dusty or decayed, not crumbling or collapsed. It looked as if the priests had left yesterday. The walls were covered in painted scenes, colors still vibrant. The floor was tiled in intricate geometric patterns, and the objects were everywhere. There were shelves holding hundreds of scroll containers. There were statues standing in alcoves, their surfaces gleaming. There were chests with sealed lids. There were tables covered with instruments that looked like nothing anyone had seen before. And in the center of it all, suspended by chains from the ceiling, was the sphere. Dr. Morrison made the decision. They would enter in person the next day. They needed time to process what they were seeing, time to prepare, and perhaps time to gather courage. Because one thing was clear from the robot's footage. This was no ordinary burial chamber. This was no simple storage room. This was something else entirely. Something the ancient world had built with purpose and precision. Something they had sealed away with dire warnings. And now, after 3,000 years, humanity was about to step inside and confront whatever secrets had been waiting in the darkness. The next morning, Dr. Morrison and 3 colleagues became the first humans to enter the forbidden chamber in over 3,000 years. They wore protective suits, not because they expected danger, but because they wanted to avoid contaminating the space. Every breath, every touch could potentially damage artifacts that had survived millennia. The first thing that struck them was the temperature. The chamber was cool, significantly cooler than the desert above. The ancient ventilation system, still functioning after all this time, had created a stable environment that protected everything inside. The second thing they noticed was the silence. Not the silence of an empty tomb, but something deeper, a quality of quiet that felt almost alive, as if the chamber itself was holding its breath. The main chamber was even more impressive in person than it had appeared through the robot's camera. The ceiling rose above them, carved with astronomical charts that showed the night sky as it had appeared 3,000 years ago. But these weren't just decorative. Each star was marked with hieroglyphic annotations, mathematical calculations, measurements that would have been impossible to make without sophisticated instruments. The walls told a story, not the usual stories of pharaohs and conquests. This was different. The painted scenes showed the history of Kem itself. They showed the temple being built. They showed the priests receiving knowledge from beings that were depicted as taller than normal humans, with elongated skulls and strange proportions. They showed ceremonies involving light and sound, rituals that seemed to involve manipulating forces of nature. One panel in particular caught Dr. Morrison's attention. It showed a chamber, presumably the one they were standing in, with the sphere in the center. Around the sphere, priests were shown in various positions, their hands raised toward it. And from the sphere, lines radiated outward, touching each priest. The image suggested some kind of energy transfer or communion, but it was the objects in the chamber that truly amazed the team. Let me describe what they found, category by category, because each discovery raised new questions about what the ancient people of Kem actually knew. First, there were the scrolls, hundreds of them, stored in cylindrical containers made of a material that looked like clay but was surprisingly light and strong. Each container was sealed with wax and marked with symbols indicating its contents. When the team carefully opened the first scroll, they found papyrus in near-perfect condition. The text was written in several scripts, including the mysterious third language from the door. The scrolls covered an astonishing range of topics. There were mathematical texts with calculations that wouldn't be discovered by European mathematics for another 2,000 years. There were medical texts describing surgical procedures and herbal remedies. There were astronomical charts predicting eclipses centuries in advance. And there were philosophical texts discussing concepts of consciousness, reality, and the nature of time. But the most intriguing scrolls were those written in the unknown language. These texts were accompanied by illustrations that suggested they contained instructions. Instructions for what? No one could yet determine. But the images showed the sphere, showed the chamber, showed people performing specific actions in specific sequences. Second, there were the instruments. On stone tables throughout the chamber, the priests had left behind tools that defied easy explanation. There were devices made of polished metal that looked like they might be for measurement. But measuring what? There were crystalline objects of perfect geometric shapes. Pyramids, spheres, cubes, all carved from a single piece of clear quartz. There were bronze discs with intricate etchings that seemed to be some kind of calculation device. One instrument in particular fascinated Dr. Morrison's team. It consisted of a central rod surrounded by 7 rings, each ring capable of rotating independently. The rings were marked with symbols, hundreds of them, arranged in what appeared to be a specific order. It looked like a combination lock on a massive scale. But what was it meant to open or activate? Third, there were the statues. 7 of them, each standing in its own alcove, each facing toward the center of the chamber where the sphere hung. These were not typical Egyptian statues. They were life-sized, incredibly detailed, and made from a black stone that seemed to absorb light. Each statue depicted a figure in priestly robes, hands positioned in a specific gesture. But here's the strange part. The faces were covered with masks made of gold, and these masks were not solid. They had openings at the eyes, and behind those openings, inside the statues' heads, were crystals. When light struck these crystals, they refracted it in complex patterns, projecting colors and shapes onto the chamber walls. It was clearly intentional, clearly part of the chamber's design. But why? What was the purpose of these light projections? Fourth, and perhaps most puzzling, were the chests. There were 12 large chests arranged in a circle around the sphere. Each chest was made of wood, reinforced with bands of copper, and each was sealed with the same combination of symbols seen on the main door. The team decided not to open these immediately. Whatever was inside had been considered important enough to seal within sealed containers, inside a sealed chamber. They would approach these with extreme caution. But it was the sphere itself that dominated the chamber and dominated everyone's attention. Up close, it was even more mysterious than the scans had suggested. The sphere appeared to be made of metal, but no metal they could identify. Its surface was smooth and reflective, like polished silver, but it seemed to generate its own faint light. Not enough to illuminate the chamber, but enough that you could see a soft glow if you looked closely. The sphere was suspended by 4 chains that descended from the ceiling. But when the team examined these chains, they found something impossible. The chains weren't actually supporting the sphere's weight. When they used precision instruments to measure the tension in the chains, they found almost none. The chains were barely pulling at all. It was as if the sphere was floating, and the chains were just there to keep it centered. But that's impossible. Objects don't float, not unless they're suspended in fluid, or held by magnets, or supported by air pressure, and none of those explanations fit. Dr. Morrison's team spent hours examining the sphere. They used every non-invasive tool they had. X-rays showed that the interior was not hollow, but the density readings were inconsistent, changing from moment to moment, as if the sphere's mass was fluctuating. Thermal imaging showed that the sphere was slightly warmer than room temperature, about 0.5 degrees Celsius warmer, but there was no identifiable heat source. Most strangely, the sphere produced a sound. Not a sound you could hear normally, but one that their equipment could detect. It was emitting a steady vibration at a frequency just below human hearing, around 18 Hz. This frequency is known to cause feelings of unease in humans, a sense of presence, sometimes even hallucinations. Was this intentional? Had the ancient priests deliberately created an object that would affect human consciousness? On the surface of the sphere, barely visible, except under certain lighting conditions, were inscriptions. Thousands of tiny symbols, arranged in spiraling patterns from the top of the sphere to the bottom. The symbols were from the unknown third language, the same one that appeared on the door and in some of the scrolls. Dr. Morrison made a decision that day. She decided not to touch the sphere. Not yet. Not until they understood more about what it was and what it did. There was something about it, something in the way it seemed to pulse very slightly, in the way the air around it felt different, that told her this was not an ordinary artifact. This was something the priests had considered important enough to build an entire chamber around. And whatever it was, it deserved careful study before any direct contact. As the first day inside the chamber came to an end, the team had documented hundreds of artifacts, photographed thousands of inscriptions, and collected samples of the air, the dust, even the stone of the walls. But they had more questions than answers. What was the purpose of this chamber? Why had the priests sealed away such advanced knowledge? What was the sphere? And what was it meant to do? And perhaps most importantly, what were the instructions in those mysterious texts trying to teach? Over the following weeks, as Dr. Morrison's team worked to translate the texts and understand the artifacts, a story began to emerge. A story written in the scrolls, painted on the walls, and encoded in the very structure of the chamber itself. It was a story of why this place had been sealed and what the priests of Kem had feared. The key breakthrough came when they deciphered a long scroll that appeared to be a historical record, written by the high priest Amenhotep Sa himself, the same priest who had pronounced the curse. This scroll, written in his final days, explained everything. According to Amenhotep Sa, the priests of Kem had inherited knowledge from a much older civilization, a civilization that existed long before the pyramids, long before recorded history. This older civilization had achieved incredible things. They had mastered mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and something else. Something Amenhotep Sa called the manipulation of the fundamental forces. This older civilization had created devices, tools, and techniques that could harness natural energies in ways that seemed like magic. The sphere was one of these devices. According to the scroll, it was called the Heart of Thoth, and it was meant to be a tool for consciousness expansion, a device that could allow the human mind to perceive reality in ways normally impossible. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. Amenhotep-Sa wrote that this ancient civilization had destroyed itself, not through war or disaster, but through knowledge. They had learned things, seen things, understood things that had fundamentally broken their society. Some had gone mad. Others had become so detached from normal human concerns that they stopped caring about survival. Their civilization had simply dissolved, leaving behind only ruins and artifacts. The priests of Kem had found these ruins. They had studied the artifacts. They had learned to read the ancient texts, and they had realized that this knowledge was dangerous, not because it was false, but because it was true. Because once certain things are known, they cannot be unknown. Once the human mind sees beyond certain veils, it cannot go back. Amenhotep-Sa described a series of experiments his predecessors had conducted with the sphere. They had activated it, following the ancient instructions, and it worked. The priests who participated reported experiences of unity with all things, of seeing through time, of understanding the fundamental structure of reality. But these experiences had come with a cost. Some priests could not return to normal life after touching the sphere's consciousness. They had seen that the world they knew was just one layer of something far more complex, and they could not unsee it. They stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring about anything except trying to return to that expanded state. Within months, several had died, simply sitting in meditation, refusing to move. Others had different reactions. They became convinced that normal human concerns were meaningless. Politics, family, survival, all of it seemed like children's games compared to what they had experienced. They began teaching that the material world was an illusion that should be abandoned. Their influence began to destabilize the entire society. The elders of Kem realized they had a crisis. The sphere was real. The knowledge it offered was real. But humanity, at least humanity of that time, was not ready for it. Knowledge didn't make people better. It didn't elevate society. It broke people and shattered communities. So they made a choice. They would preserve the knowledge because destroying it felt wrong, felt like murdering truth itself. But they would seal it away. They would create a chamber that could only be opened by those who came with the right intentions and the right understanding. They would leave warnings that would grow more dire with time, hoping that future generations would have the wisdom to approach this power carefully. Amenhotep-Sa's final words in the scroll were chilling. He wrote, "We leave this for those who come after, not as a gift, but as a test. The sphere can show you the truth, but truth without wisdom is poison. Truth without compassion is destruction. If you have opened this chamber, pray that you are ready for what you will find. Pray that your world is stronger than ours was. And if you are not ready, then by all the gods, seal this place again and walk away." The team also found other evidence supporting this story. In one of the smaller chambers, they discovered what appeared to be medical records, ancient papyri describing patients with symptoms that sounded eerily like modern descriptions of psychological breakdown, dissociation, and catatonia. The dates on these records clustered around a specific period, about 50 years before the city was abandoned. In another room, they found personal journals written by ordinary citizens of Kem. These journals described a city falling apart. They described respected priests who had gone silent, staring at nothing. They described families torn apart by disputes between those who believed the old ways and those who followed the enlightened teachers. They described a growing sense that something was terribly wrong. And finally, they found the evidence of the evacuation itself, a set of official orders issued by the last pharaoh-appointed governor of Kem. The orders were clear. The city was to be abandoned immediately. The temple complex was to be sealed. No one was to speak of what had happened there. The official reason given was spiritual contamination. The priests of Kem had chosen to walk away from their knowledge rather than let it destroy them completely. They had sealed the chamber, pronounced their warnings, and scattered. Some went to other cities. Others disappeared into the desert. Within a generation, Kem was nothing but ruins and legends. Now, 3,000 years later, the chamber was open again. The warnings had been heard, but not heeded. The sphere sat, waiting, just as it had for millennia. And the question facing Dr. Morrison and her team was the same question the ancient priests had faced. What do you do with knowledge that might be too dangerous to know? When Dr. Morrison published her initial findings in June 2019, the world reacted with a mixture of fascination and skepticism. The archaeological discoveries were undeniable. The chamber was real. The artifacts were real. The advanced knowledge in the scrolls was real. But the story behind it? The warnings about dangerous consciousness expanding technology? That was harder for many to accept. Skeptics had reasonable questions. They pointed out that ancient texts often described mundane things in mystical terms. Perhaps the sphere was just a religious object, and the psychological effects were simply the result of ritual, meditation, and suggestion. Perhaps the collapse of Kem's society had nothing to do with the sphere, and everything to do with normal historical forces like drought, politics, or economic problems. But the artifacts themselves kept pushing back against simple explanations. The mathematical texts showed knowledge that shouldn't have existed. The astronomical charts predicted events with impossible accuracy. The medical texts described procedures that wouldn't be discovered for millennia. And the sphere itself continued to defy analysis. In the months following the opening, several strange incidents occurred that only deepened the mystery. 3 members of Dr. Morrison's team reported unusual dreams after working in the chamber. Dreams that were vivid, consistent across different people, and seemed to contain information none of them should have known. One researcher dreamed of mathematical proofs that, when she wrote them down, turned out to be correct. Another dreamed of a location in the desert where, when they investigated, they found previously unknown ruins. Dr. Morrison herself began experiencing what she described as expanded time perception after spending long hours near the sphere. She said that sometimes, while working in the chamber, she would feel as if hours had passed when only minutes had gone by, or vice versa. Her sense of time became unreliable. It took weeks away from the site for this effect to fade. These reports led to a difficult decision. In October 2019, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, in consultation with international experts, decided to temporarily close access to the chamber. They called it a precaution while they conducted more studies, but everyone understood what was really happening. The warnings were being taken seriously. This decision sparked intense debate. Some accused the authorities of hiding the truth, of bowing to superstition. Others praised them for being cautious with something they didn't understand. Religious groups had their own opinions, ranging from "this is demonic and should be destroyed" to "this is sacred and should be studied with reverence." Meanwhile, The work of translating and understanding the texts continued. Linguists made breakthrough after breakthrough with the mysterious third language. It turned out to be incredibly sophisticated, more like a programming language than a normal, written language. It had layers of meaning, mathematical structures, embedded in the grammar, and symbolic logic built into the syntax. One scholar described it as a language designed not to describe reality, but to manipulate it. The instructions in the texts weren't just instructions for rituals. They were algorithms, step-by-step processes for achieving specific mental and perceptual states. The ancient priests hadn't been practicing religion in the way we usually think of it. They had been following exact procedures, like running software on the hardware of human consciousness. As the translations progressed, the team found something that changed everything again. Hidden in one of the longer scrolls was what appeared to be a warning, specifically for future discoverers. A warning written as if Amenhotep Sa knew that one day, people from a very different world would read his words. The warning said, "To those who find this in ages hence, we know you will think yourselves wiser than we were. You will think your understanding surpasses ours. You will believe your world is more stable, your mind more prepared. We thought the same when we found these relics. We were wrong. The sphere does not care how advanced you think you are. It only shows what is, and what is often more than minds can hold. Proceed with humility, or do not proceed at all." By early 2020, a decision was reached. The chamber would remain sealed to general access, but research would continue under strict protocols. No one would be allowed to activate the sphere. No one would be allowed to spend more than 4 hours in the chamber at a time. All researchers would undergo psychological evaluation before and after each session. The artifacts could be studied, the texts could be translated, but the sphere itself would remain untouched. Not everyone agreed with this approach. Some researchers argued they were giving in to superstition, that the psychological effects could be explained by suggestion and expectation. They wanted full access and wanted to test the sphere properly. But Dr. Morrison, who had spent more time in the chamber than anyone, supported the restrictions. In her words, "I've spent my career as a scientist, believing that all knowledge should be pursued, that truth is always worth seeking. But standing in that chamber, near that sphere, reading those warnings, I understand, now that our ancestors weren't primitive or superstitious. They were cautious. They had learned something we're still learning, that some knowledge requires wisdom before understanding, and that seeking truth without preparation can break not just individuals, but entire societies. Maybe we're ready for what's in that chamber, maybe we're not. But I'd rather we take time to find out than rush in and discover too late that we weren't." The discovery in Kem forced historians and archaeologists to ask uncomfortable questions about what we think we know about the ancient world. For centuries, we've operated under certain assumptions. We've assumed that ancient people were less advanced than we are. We've assumed that their knowledge grew in a linear progression, that each generation built upon the last. We've assumed that stories of lost civilizations and advanced ancient technology were myths. But the chamber in Kem doesn't fit that narrative. The knowledge preserved there is too advanced, too sophisticated, too precise. It suggests that the ancient Egyptians, or someone before them, knew things that shouldn't have been possible with their supposed technology. And that raises a disturbing possibility. What if human history isn't a story of steady progress? What if it's a story of cycles? What if civilizations have risen to great heights before, achieved incredible knowledge, and then fallen, leaving only fragments behind? What if we're not the first technological society, just the latest one? The scrolls from Kem suggest exactly this. They speak of inheriting knowledge from those who came before. They reference structures and sites that were already ancient in their time. They describe finding artifacts they couldn't fully understand, left by people whose names had been forgotten. This idea isn't new. Plato wrote about Atlantis, a civilization that supposedly existed 9,000 years before his time. Hindu texts speak of previous ages of humanity, of civilizations that rose and fell before our own. Indigenous peoples around the world have stories of advanced ancestors who were destroyed by their own hubris. But we've always treated these as myths, as symbolic stories, rather than historical accounts. The chamber forces us to reconsider. If the priests of Kem, who were contemporaries of some of the greatest known civilizations, were speaking of lost knowledge from an even earlier time, then maybe those myths contain more truth than we've been willing to admit. But here's what makes this discovery truly significant for our understanding of history. It's not just about ancient technology or lost civilizations. It's about the nature of knowledge itself. The priests of Kem discovered that knowledge can be dangerous, that some truths, once known, change people in ways that can't be reversed, that a society can collapse not from ignorance, but from knowing too much, too soon. This has implications for how we think about other ancient mysteries. Why did certain civilizations suddenly abandon their cities? Why did some societies deliberately bury or destroy their own temples? Why are there so many stories of taboo knowledge and forbidden wisdom? Maybe the answer isn't always external forces like war, climate change, or disease. Maybe sometimes societies chose to walk away from paths they realized were dangerous. Maybe some knowledge was deliberately suppressed, not out of ignorance or fear of blasphemy, but out of hard-won wisdom about what humans were ready to handle. The sphere in Kem might not be unique. Similar objects, similarly sealed away, might exist in other locations. In fact, some researchers have begun looking at other sealed chambers around the world with new eyes. The sealed rooms beneath the Sphinx, the unexplored chambers in Chinese pyramids, the forbidden sections of certain Mayan temples. Could these all be repositories of similar knowledge, similar warnings? Dr. Morrison and her colleagues have proposed a theory they call cyclical knowledge horizons. The idea is that there are certain levels of knowledge that, once reached, force a civilization into a crisis point. The civilization must either integrate that knowledge wisely and ascend to a new level of maturity, or it will fragment and collapse under the weight of truths it isn't ready to handle. According to this theory, the ancient civilization that created the sphere reached one of these knowledge horizons. They crossed it, and it destroyed them. The priests of Kem found the remnants, began to cross the same horizon, and recognized the danger in time to step back. They sealed away the knowledge, leaving it for a future humanity that might be more ready. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. Are we ready? Is modern humanity prepared to integrate knowledge about consciousness, reality, and human potential that broke previous civilizations? Do we have the wisdom to match our technology, the compassion to match our power, the humility to know when to proceed carefully? The scrolls suggest that the test isn't whether you can open the chamber. It's what you do once you have it. It's whether you rush to use what you find, or whether you pause to understand it first. It's whether you treat ancient warnings as superstition to be dismissed, or as hard-won wisdom to be respected. The discovery at Kem doesn't just rewrite what we know about ancient Egypt or ancient civilizations. It rewrites what we understand about human knowledge, human potential, and human responsibility. It suggests that the story of humanity is more complex, more cyclical, and more dangerous than we've wanted to believe. And it leaves us with a choice. Do we treat this as just another archaeological discovery to be catalogued and filed away? Or do we see it as a warning from ancestors who learned, at great cost, lessons we might desperately need? So what is the truth about the Forbidden Chamber? What was really sealed away beneath the sands of Chem for 3,000 years? The physical facts are clear. There is a chamber. There are artifacts of incredible sophistication. There are texts containing advanced knowledge. There is a sphere that defies current scientific understanding. There are warnings written by people who seem genuinely afraid of what they had discovered. All of this is real, documented, verified by multiple, independent sources. But the interpretation? That's where things become complicated. Some researchers believe the sphere is exactly what the ancient texts claim, a device for manipulating consciousness, created by a civilization far more advanced than we've imagined. They point to the unexplained physics, the consistent reports of psychological effects, the sophisticated knowledge encoded in the texts. Others believe there are more mundane explanations we simply haven't found yet. They argue that the sphere might be a religious object whose effects are psychological rather than technological. They suggest that the advanced knowledge might have been preserved from earlier Egyptian sources we haven't discovered yet. They point out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And while the evidence is intriguing, it's not conclusive. The truth is, we don't know. Not yet. Not completely. And maybe that's exactly as it should be. Maybe the chamber's greatest lesson isn't what it contains, but how it forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the dangers of certainty. What we do know is that the chamber raises questions we need to answer. Questions about our past, our present, and our future. Questions about what knowledge is worth pursuing and what wisdom is required before pursuing it. Questions about whether we're ready to face truths that might change everything we think we know about reality, consciousness, and human potential. The sphere still sits in that chamber, inactive but present. The texts are still being translated, revealing new insights and new mysteries with each passing month. The warnings still echo through the ages, reminding us that some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. Dr. Morrison's team continues their work, but slowly, carefully, with the caution the ancient priests advised. They're treating this not as a race to discover everything, but as a responsibility to understand what should be discovered and when and how. As for whether the sphere will ever be activated, whether we'll ever test whether the ancient claims were true, that remains an open question. The Egyptian government has stated that no such attempt will be made without international consensus and extensive ethical review. Some say that day will never come. Others say it's inevitable, that human curiosity cannot be restrained forever. Perhaps the real answer is that the chamber has already achieved its purpose, not by revealing all its secrets, but by forcing us to ask whether we're ready for them. Not by giving us knowledge, but by making us think about wisdom. Not by answering questions, but by teaching us which questions we should be asking. The forbidden chamber no one was allowed to enter has been opened, but its deepest mysteries remain sealed, not by stone or curse, but by our own recognition that some truths require preparation before they can be safely known. And maybe, just maybe, that recognition is exactly the wisdom the ancient priests hoped we would gain. Maybe passing that test, showing that restraint, is what makes us finally ready for what comes next. Or maybe we're still not ready at all. So that's the story of the Forbidden Chamber. A story of ancient wisdom, modern discovery, and timeless questions. But here's the thing. This story isn't finished. The chamber is still there. The sphere is still waiting. And the questions it raises are still unanswered. I want to know what you think. Do you believe the warnings? Do you think the ancient priests were right to seal away their knowledge? Or do you think we should push forward, activate the sphere, and see what happens? Do you trust that modern humanity has the wisdom to handle dangerous truths? Or do you think we're just as vulnerable as the people of Kem were 3,000 years ago? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Which theory about the sphere do you find most convincing? What do you think was the purpose of the chamber? And here's the big one. If you were Dr. Morrison, would you activate the sphere? If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button. It helps us know you want more content like this. And if you're interested in more mysteries from the ancient world, more stories of forbidden knowledge and hidden truths, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have several more documentaries in production that I think you're going to find absolutely incredible.